Welcome back to AP World History. We're now going to take a look at the second part of our rounding out the 15th century by looking at Central Asia and the Islamic empires that rise up in the region. Starting us off here, we're actually going to look at a pastoral, or the last of the pastoral empires here, which is led by Timur, also known as Tamerlane, and he's going to conquer parts of Russia, Persia, and India, and cause chaos in these regions because he will destroy, just as the Mongols did, major city centers of the regions he conquers. He will build up his home of Samarkand and the area of Central Asia. They will flourish during this time, but he goes and destroys and brings about the end of major kingdoms like the Delhi Sultanate. He'll severely weaken that. He will weaken part of the Ottomans here before they go into becoming the Ottoman Empire, which we'll see. Weakens parts of Russia again. So causes a lot of chaos here, but his empire falls apart when he dies. And again, this is the last major push by any pastoral group to cause major change in the primarily agricultural world that the rest of the world is in. So, the Ottoman Empire. They are kind of the oldest of these empires that we're going to look at, and they will be the longest lasting of them as well. They are based out of Turkey, or what we call Anatolia, and they will replace the Byzantine Empire. They do this slowly by first starting out in Anatolia and slowly conquering territory there, pushing down south into the Middle East, into Egypt, and conquering those territories. And then in 1453, they'll knock out the Byzantines by conquering Constantinople, their capital. They'll rename that Istanbul, and then they will solidify their control over the Balkans, Turkey, the Middle East, parts of Arabia, and going into Egypt and North Africa. And so that will become kind of the extent of their territory. That'll be not really in 1450, but we'll see that happen as we go through the 1600s and 1700s. Now, they become a major threat for Europe, in that the Europeans fear attacks by the Ottomans constantly, and the Ottomans are always trying to kind of push into Europe. However, they don't successfully do that at all. They get as far as the Balkans, and that's where kind of things fall apart and stay. And they also will get distracted part of this time by their rivals in the east, known as the Safavid Empire, which is based out of Persia, and we'll talk about them here in a little bit. One of the major things, though, to know about the Ottomans is a group of citizens and soldiers known as the Janissaries. We're going to look at these guys more as well as we go later into this unit, but this is a important group to know that we're going to see come up over and over again throughout the empire's history. In that these are some elite soldiers, but will also become major figures in the bureaucracy that runs the Ottoman Empire. And they aren't Muslims, and they're not actually given a choice as whether they want to do this or not. They are picked. They are Christians that are picked out of the Balkan region, and they are picked based on a tax that the family has to give one of their male heirs to the Ottomans to join their military or join their government through a tax called through a program called the Devshirme. And that makes them a janissary, and they became these elite units that also would advise the rulers and helped the Ottomans through become or get to their height, but they'll also be part of the reason why they won't reform and will eventually start to decline as we get to the 1800s and 1900s. Now, next to the east of the Ottomans, we have the Safavids, and they are a new Persian empire. They'll actually rise up in the 1500s, so really after the time period that I said we're talking about, but we're going to bend the rules on this one a little bit. And we're going to talk about them more here because it falls in line with what's going on with the Ottomans and them being established and the Mughals. And so the Safavids will rise up in the 1500s. And they will revive Persia as an empire. Persia had kind of fallen to the wayside. They'd been controlled by groups like the Mongols, Timur, and they now rise up and become their own empire again. And they make a lot of their money and, become very wealthy through the Silk Road and through the Indian Ocean trade that's going on. more through the Silk Road than in the ocean trade, but they receive benefits from both. They will create a very strong government that will be led by the Shah, who will have a bureaucracy with him to help him run it. And really, the big thing to know about them is that they don't follow what all the other Muslim empires have done in following Sunni Islam. Instead, they break away and say, we're following Shia Islam. And this will make Persia different from all the other uh, Islamic areas, Islamic empires, and it will make them rivals and make them enemies with those empires really quickly. So they have to constantly fight. And this leads us to today where Iran is unique in the Middle East because it is the only truly Shia state. Iraq is starting to be that way. They weren't for a good long time because Saddam Hussein was a Sunni and ruled the country, but they have become a Shia state as well. Not entirely, but they are starting to become more of that, or they have a Shia majority. And so we have these two countries kind of rising and being those because of what happens during this time period during the Safavids. And then if we push a little bit farther east, we get to India and we reach the Mughal Empire. And they will unite almost all of India and Pakistan, and will do this through their strong military, but also through their practice of preaching tolerance. And they tolerate Muslims and Hindus working and living together, and Buddhists as well. And they don't try to force the Hindus and Buddhists to convert to Islam because they realize that they're in the minority and there are a heck of a lot more Indian Hindus than there are Muslims. And so if they try to force them to convert and they decide not to, because the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas are probably not going to convert, then you're going to be fighting civil wars constantly, and they'd rather not do that. And they'd rather focus on just controlling the whole region and not necessarily people's personal and local affairs. And so they let kind of things go as normal as what was done previously. So you still have the caste system, you have jatis, you have Hinduism playing a major role, but they'll kind of run the whole region as a whole and focus on that and controlling everyone and not on converting and forcing conversions. And so this is a major change from a lot of empires, at least Islamic empires, that look to convert people that were not part of the book, and so that were not Jewish or Christian. And then the last area we're going to look at is actually not an empire. Well, we do have a smaller empire in West Africa, the Songhai, and then we also have Southeast Asia. They're not in Central Asia, but we're going to make an exception here again. So the Songhai will rise up in West Africa after the fall of Mali, who rose up after the fall of Ghana, and they focus primarily on the gold and salt trade, and they'll last for a little over 100 years. But they're the major players in that region and with that gold and salt trade, and they'll last until kind of that starts to disappear. And then with Southeast Asia, there aren't any major empires that come up there, but we have Islam reaching those regions and converting people through trade. And so you have large Muslim populations growing up in that area and becoming strongholds. And so we can see that today in countries like Malaysia and Indonesia, which have very strong Muslim or major Muslim countries, some of the largest ones in the world. So this is kind of what the what Central Asia looks like at the turn of this and a little bit beyond 1450, and this is also what where Islam is kind of spreading to and where it's at this time. So next we'll finish this unit off with looking at the Americas and what's going on in there and how things looked just before Columbus and the Spaniards and Portuguese come in and shake up all of North America and South America.